Have you ever reached a point where you felt you couldn't take it anymore? Have you ever woken up with a heavy chest, as though the weight of the whole world was pressing down on you, and no one around you noticed? Have you ever wanted to disappear, but stayed, even when broken, even when exhausted? If your answer is yes, then this message is meant for you. God led me here today to remind you of something important. Your story isn't over. I understand that sometimes it feels impossible to believe that. When tears soak into your pillow, when the numbers don't add up, when your heart cries out that it can't take it any longer, hope feels like the most distant thing from reality. But walk with me for a few moments, through 4 truths that might just shift the course of your life. Have you ever felt utterly alone, even while surrounded by people? Like you're standing in a crowd, but still somehow invisible? There are times when pain hides so quietly that no one notices. You keep smiling at work, chatting with your mates, sharing snapshots on social media. But behind the bedroom door, it's just you and the weight of all that remains unseen. Your soul screams silently, but outwardly, everything appears fine. Have you ever known that feeling? Many people assume that God's silence means He's doing nothing. That because you've prayed, cried, begged, and nothing has changed, He must have turned away. But listen carefully. God's silence has never meant absence. Often, it's sacred ground. It's in that quiet that He's working, unseen, arranging things in ways you can't yet comprehend. He's piecing together parts of a puzzle that will only make sense when it's fully revealed. The people of Israel understood this reality. They endured centuries in slavery, with no visible sign that freedom was on the way. Picture a Jewish mother in those days, rocking her child to sleep and whispering, "One day, God will rescue us." That child grows up, becomes a father, and repeats the same promise to his own children. 400 years passed. Generation after generation, clinging to hope. Could you wait that long? Could your faith endure centuries of silence? Most of us struggle to wait even 4 months for a new job. We find it hard to wait 4 days for a message response without feeling forgotten. But God doesn't work on our timetable. He moves within the timing of eternity. He sees what we cannot. Sometimes you're praying for something and God says, "Wait," not to deny you, but to shield you from a heartache you don't yet know exists. Other times, He's strengthening your foundations before placing in your hands the very thing you've been asking for. It's like building a foundation underground. No one sees it, but if it's weak, everything above will collapse. And God would rather delay your answer than watch you crumble later. How often do we find ourselves wondering, has God forgotten me? Perhaps right now you're out of work, trying to juggle bills with barely enough left to feed yourself. Maybe you're caring for a sick loved one, and it feels like the entire burden rests on your shoulders. Or you're locked in a silent internal battle that no one else sees: anxiety, depression, emotional burnout. You wake in the night with a racing heart, your thoughts spinning out of control, and all you long for is to feel peace again. But let me tell you something. God sees every bit of it. And more than that, He feels your pain. He cries alongside you. He holds your hand in the early hours when sleep won't come. Even if you don't hear a voice from above, even if there's no light shining into your room, even if no grand miracle unfolds before your eyes, He is still there. And how can I be so sure of this? Because Jesus Himself, the Son of the living God, experienced the silence of the Father. In the Garden of Gethsemane, just moments before being taken prisoner, He cried out, "Father, if it's possible, take this cup away from me." And yet, heaven remained silent. But even in that silence, He did not turn back. Because He understood that silence wasn't absence, it was part of the divine plan. How many times have you felt like God was silent just when you needed Him most? When someone walked out of your life without a word. When a dream you built over years crumbled overnight. When you lost someone you loved with your whole heart. Or when you tried to do everything right, yet everything still seemed to go wrong. The pain of waiting is real. The feeling of being abandoned can seem so convincing. But that's all it is, a feeling. Because the truth is this: God has never left your side. There are times when we must pause and remember that heaven remains unshaken, even when the world around us feels like it's falling apart. That God is still on the throne, even when life is spinning out of control. That He remains our Father, even when we feel like we're alone in the dark. That He is still caring for us, even when everything inside us is screaming for help. And here's the beautiful part: even if you've stopped praying, even if your faith has grown cold, even if you've walked away, He has not turned His back on you. Because real love isn't earned. God doesn't love you because of what you do. He loves you because of who you are, His child. And a child may wander, but they never stop being a child. If all you can feel today is silence, just breathe. This is not the end. It might actually be the very moment where God is laying the foundation for what comes next. You might be walking in the dark now, but the sunrise could be just around the corner. If you can take one more step, whisper one more prayer, wait one more night, the morning that comes might be the new beginning you've been desperately hoping for. Can you recall a time when everything felt lost, and then something happened out of the blue? A sign, a person, an open door just in time? That wasn't luck. That was divine care. That was grace in action. And it will happen again. God is still listening. He still sees your effort. And He still has extraordinary plans for your life. Nothing is beyond His reach. Not your sorrow, not your mistakes, not even this season that feels so stagnant. Believe me when I say, God's silence is never punishment. It is love, working quietly. It's a miracle forming behind the scenes. It's an answer being woven where eyes cannot see. So don't give up now. Hold on just a bit longer. Because one day, maybe sooner than you think, you'll look back and realize, it was right here, in the middle of all the silence, that God began to change everything. And trust me, He already has. Have you ever stopped to think how many times you held yourself back because you thought you no longer deserved a second chance? How many opportunities you let pass by because you believed you were unworthy? Sometimes, the real battle isn't what people say about us, it's the lies we begin to accept after we've fallen. And that hurts. There's no pain quite like carrying the weight of your own failure and believing that's all you'll ever be from now on. Some carry guilt as if it's their name. People who made mistakes in the past and now live in silence, hiding themselves. People who drifted from church, from faith, from the promises spoken over their lives, thinking that God only works through those who have it all together, those who've never stumbled, those who always got it right. Let me remind you of a profound truth. God doesn't seek out the flawless, He calls the willing. Think about Peter. He walked closely beside Jesus, witnessed miracles firsthand, encountered the supernatural. Yet when the hour of darkness came, that critical moment in history, he denied even knowing his master. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. He swore he had no connection to Jesus, driven by fear, shame, and sheer panic. Can you imagine what must have haunted him afterwards? The guilt, the regret, the deep conviction that he had let down the one who loved him most. And yet, what did Jesus do after rising from the dead? He went looking for Peter, not to rebuke him, not to revisit the failure, but to restore him. Jesus looked Peter in the eyes and asked, "Do you love me?" And with every heartfelt yes, Jesus reaffirmed his purpose, "Then take care of my sheep." With those words, he was saying, "You still matter. I still believe in you. Your failure hasn't cancelled your calling. I still see worth in you." Maybe you're the one who needs to hear that today. That despite everything that's happened, you still have value. Even after the betrayal. Even after the relapse. Even after that secret mistake no one else knows about, but which you carry like an invisible scar. God still longs for your closeness. He still has plans in place. And He isn't chained to what you've done, He looks at who you're becoming. So many people spend a lifetime stuck at a single moment of pain, as if that one misstep could define their entire journey. People who let go of the chance to rebuild their family because they convinced themselves they weren't worthy of love. People who buried their dreams because they felt too small to try again. People who gave up before they even started because they thought the time had passed them by. But listen, if you're still breathing, there's still time. Remember the story of the prodigal son? He made a devastating choice. He demanded his inheritance as if his father had already died. He walked away, squandered everything, lost himself. And when he returned home, ready to be treated as no more than a servant, the father ran to him, embraced him, slipped a ring on his finger, sandals on his feet, and threw a celebration. Because a father's love isn't conditional on the child's performance. He loves because he is a father. And that's how God feels about you. How many times have you told yourself, "I'm not the same anymore," and used that as a reason to distance yourself from what once brought you joy and peace? But what if I told you God knows you've changed, and even so, He still wants you back? He isn't holding out for a perfect version of you. He's waiting for a genuine one. And when your life's fragments fall into His hands, He turns them into a masterpiece. He's a specialist in transforming disgrace into grace. He takes failures and molds them into powerful testimonies. He turns dead ends into divine new beginnings. Think of Oprah Winfrey. She endured abuse during childhood, lost her first job after being told she wasn't fit for television. She was overlooked, but she didn't stop. She confronted her wounds, faced her past, and today stands among the most influential voices in the world. Why? Because she didn't allow her pain to dictate her destiny. And if she, through every hardship and stumble, managed to rise, what's stopping you? Your story is like a book. You can't define the entire narrative by a single difficult chapter. You are not your past hurt. You are not that mistake. You are not the collapse of everything you once held together. God is still writing. And when He holds the pen, the ending always changes for the better. You haven't been forgotten. You haven't been cast aside. You haven't been written off. Sometimes, what silences us most isn't what others say, it's the things we say to ourselves when no one else is listening. But today, I want to challenge you to change the script. Each time you catch yourself thinking, "I'm not enough," respond with unwavering faith, "But God is." Every time guilt tries to drown out grace, remind your soul that where sin increased, grace increased all the more. And when you feel unworthy, exhausted, doubted, or lost, understand that it is precisely people like you whom God chooses to write the most remarkable testimonies. Because when He works through those who are weak, it becomes unmistakably clear that the strength comes from Him. When He lifts up the broken, the world can see that power lies in grace, not in human achievement. So stop hiding. Stop holding yourself back. Stop removing yourself from a story that is still being written. God hasn't finished with you. And if He hasn't given up on you, then you shouldn't either. Take a deep breath. Lift your eyes. And begin again. Because the place of your pain might just be the very beginning of your breakthrough. What you see as a conclusion. God may be calling a brand new beginning. Have you ever considered that the pain you're feeling now might be transformed into the most powerful testimony of your life? It sounds odd, doesn't it? Because when suffering presses down on us, all we want is for it to stop. We long to escape it, to breathe again. Yet sometimes, in the middle of the chaos, God starts setting the stage for something miraculous. What makes you cry today could one day be the very reason someone else chooses to rise from bed and not give up. Think of Joseph's journey. Betrayed by his own brothers. Sold like a possession. Wrongfully accused. Left to rot in a prison for years. And this, after dreaming he'd be used in mighty ways. Nothing seemed to align with the promise. What kind of divine plan leads the chosen one into a dungeon? But even there, Joseph refused to give up. And at the right time, he was summoned before Pharaoh and appointed the second most powerful man in all of Egypt. Not only that, he became the means of rescue for the very family who had once betrayed him. When they returned years later, afraid of what he might do, Joseph looked at them and said, "What you intended to harm me, God used for good, to preserve many lives." Now, picture that truth woven into your own story. That betrayal, that grief, that moment you were cast aside and humiliated. What if all of that is the foundation from which God plans to bring healing to others? What if the reason you're enduring this pain is greater than you? What if someone far ahead on your path, someone you haven't met yet, is waiting to hear your story because it will give them the courage to carry on? That's why pain is never pointless. God never wastes suffering. He transforms it. He repurposes it. He brings life from the ashes. And this isn't just poetic language. It's real. It happens every single day in the lives of people who made the decision not to quit. Think of a mother who lost her child and now supports other grieving mothers. Or someone who once battled addiction, now speaking in schools and prisons. Or a young person who once attempted to end it all, and now embraces others on the brink, helping them hold on. These people didn't win only for themselves. They overcame for the sake of others. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what God wants to do with you. How many times have you felt too weak to even get out of bed? When the emptiness inside you made everything seem pointless. And yet, you still went on. You took another step. You did the little you could. And that, in itself, was a victory. Choosing to carry on when every part of your soul is pleading with you to give up is one of the most courageous things anyone can do. So many people are fighting silent battles right now. People quietly weeping on the bus, resting their heads against the window, hoping no one notices. People who laugh in public with their friends but break down the moment they're alone. People who say, "I'm fine," just to stop others from worrying. Maybe you are one of those people. And if you are, then you understand how deeply a single word can change everything. A simple message. Someone's presence. A gentle, "I've been there too, and I'm still here." That is precisely why God wants to lift you up again. Because there is someone out there who needs your story so they don't give up on theirs. There is someone who will only start to believe that winning is possible once they see you overcoming. Someone who will only keep breathing once they discover that you too felt like you were suffocating and made it through. Look at the journey of the singer Demi Lovato. She battled drug addiction, eating disorders, self-harm. She fell. She was hospitalized. But she chose to live. And beyond that, she chose to share her pain so that others might heal. Today, her story of survival inspires young people across the globe to find hope again. But you don't need to be a celebrity to make a difference in the world. Sometimes, changing the world means changing someone's world, that of a friend, a neighbor, a work colleague, or even a stranger who crosses your path at just the right moment. When you allow God to transform your wounds, you become a living vessel of healing. And you might wonder, "But I haven't healed yet. How can I help anyone when I'm still trying to put myself back together?" The answer is, that's exactly why you can help. Because some people don't need advice from someone who's already made it to the finish line. They need someone who's still walking, still feeling the weight, still showing up despite the pain. They're not looking for perfect answers, they're longing for genuine understanding. For a hug that doesn't let go too quickly. For someone who says, "I'm still hurting, but I'm not stopping. Walk with me." You don't have to be whole to be used. What you do need is a willingness to let God use the pieces you already have. Because as long as you believe your story is just about suffering, it will feel like a burden. But the moment you realize there's a higher purpose behind every tear and trial, that same story becomes fuel for something greater. And then you begin to understand, none of it was pointless. Today, you might feel broken. You might be down on the ground, trying to gather the shattered bits of yourself. But even there, God can begin something new. Even there, He can start working through your life. Even from that place, He can bring beauty out of the wreckage. And when that day arrives, and it will, you'll look back and say, "It was painful. It was long. It almost destroyed me, but it was worth every second. Because now I am the voice that brings comfort. I am the hand that lifts others. I am the light that shows the way to those lost in the dark." And maybe that calling is far bigger than any dream you had before the suffering began. Because there is no testimony without a journey. And your journey is still unfolding. But the ending? God has already written it. And it is filled with triumph. With healing. With rebirth. With impact. With life. Sometimes, everything within us cries out that it's over. That there's no way out. No more strength. No more reason to keep going. And in those moments, hope feels like too beautiful a word for a life so heavy and so hard. Have you ever felt like that? Like you were trapped in a dead-end alley where every path just circles back to nowhere? where your body keeps going through the motions, but your soul is tired of the fight. Maybe that's exactly where you are today, your tears long since dried from having cried so much. With a heart hardened by repeated disappointment, and a faith so bruised it's unsure whether it can even pray again. Yet, even when everything seems to scream no, there's still a quiet whisper that says, keep going. And though that whisper may be faint, it is undeniably real. It is the voice of the Holy Spirit within you, gently reminding you that there is still something waiting, something you haven't experienced yet, something God still wants to do through your life. Because with God, what looks like the end is never the conclusion. It's merely the beginning of something far greater, even if your eyes cannot see it just yet. Think about the woman who had suffered from bleeding for 12 years. She had exhausted every possible option. She had spent all her money. No one could help her. And maybe, like you, she had nights when she wanted to disappear, when she felt ashamed, broken, and utterly depleted. But then, she heard about Jesus. And that was enough. Just a spark of hope was enough to ignite something new inside her. Even in weakness, she stood up. Though considered unclean by her society, she pushed her way through the crowd. Even without certainty of what might happen, she stretched out her hand. And the moment she touched the hem of Jesus' cloak, she was healed. How many crowds have stood between you and your miracle? How many voices echo in your mind saying, there's no point anymore. There's no cure. You've tried everything. But perhaps it's not about trying again. Perhaps it's about believing once more. Believing that one touch is enough. That one step, one honest prayer, even if it's broken by tears, is enough for God to move. Many people look at themselves and think, I've been strong for too long. I just want to rest now. But I need to remind you, hope isn't about being strong all the time. Hope is about not letting the flame go out completely. It's about holding on to even a flicker of light when everything around you feels pitch black. And God is an expert in reigniting nearly extinguished candles. Do you remember Job? He lost everything. His children, his health, his wealth, his companions, even his dignity. There were days when he longed for death. But he never abandoned his faith. And in the end, God gave him back everything, twice as much. Not because Job was flawless, but because he chose not to let go of hope. And I know, you might be reading all this and thinking, but my situation is different. I can't see how anything could ever change. But what God wants to remind you today is that your current reality doesn't have the final say. He does. And He doesn't need perfect conditions to move. He creates fresh beginnings right in the middle of the storm. He makes a path where none exists. He brings life back to what was buried. There are people right now living lives that once seemed utterly impossible. Have you heard of Tyler Perry? Before becoming one of the most successful screenwriters and producers in the United States, he was living in a car. He was rejected, dismissed, overlooked. But he didn't give up. He kept writing. He kept believing. He kept waiting. And God honored every tear, every failed attempt, every moment he nearly gave up but chose to carry on instead. That's what I want you to understand. It's not about always feeling strong. It's about refusing to quit. It's about taking the next step. Even if it's shaky. Even if it's small. Even if you're walking more slowly than everyone else. Because while you move, God works. While you persist, He builds. And believe me, what looks like an ending now will become the beginning of a new chapter. One day, you'll look back at all of this and understand why you couldn't stop there. You'll come to realize that the very moment when everything seemed to fall apart was, in fact, the beginning of something new that God started to rebuild in your life, something stronger, more beautiful, more genuine. So even if everything around you feels dark, even if nothing seems to make sense, even if you're exhausted, hold tightly to hope. It may feel delicate. It may seem frail. But it's enough to keep you standing until the miracle arrives. Can you manage just one more step? Just one. Then later, you can think about the next one. That's how you'll get there, by living one day at a time. Because the God who began this journey with you is the same one who will bring it to a close. And he never finishes a story with a full stop where there's still room for a comma of new beginnings. There is still breath in your lungs. There is still a purpose unfolding. There is still hope. And that hope has a name, Jesus. If you've made it this far, listening to every word, even with a heart weighed down, even with tears in your eyes, even without fully understanding, it's because something inside you still wants to carry on. And that alone is a miracle. Because the greatest evidence that God hasn't left you is that you are still here. You could have given up yesterday. You could have gone silent forever. You could have decided to shut down your heart. But for some reason, one you might not even be able to explain, you stayed. You remained. And that speaks far more about the strength within you than any outward success the world might see. God knows you better than anyone else ever could. He witnessed every tear you held back so no one would notice. He heard the cry that stayed locked inside your chest. He saw the day you had to drag yourself out of bed. He was there that night when you begged for peace and were met only with silence. But he was present. And he still is. You may not see it now, but an entire heaven is in motion on your behalf. Angels are encamped around you. A loving Father stands with open arms, waiting for your next step. And that step doesn't need to be grand. It can be small. It can be quiet. It can simply be you whispering, God, I can't do this on my own, but I still believe you can help me. You are not too broken. You are not too far gone. You are not too late. God doesn't measure you by what happened to you. He sees you through the lens of what he dreamed for you. And his dreams are still standing. So please, don't give up. Not now. Not after everything you've come through. You didn't make it across this wilderness just to collapse at its end. You are going to emerge from this stronger, more whole, filled with greater purpose. Because what God started, he will finish. And his endings are always glorious. Take a deep breath. Close your eyes. Feel it. That presence wrapping around you now, even in the stillness of your room, it's real. It's the love of God, holding you, restoring you, lifting you back up. You're not alone. You never were. And you never will be. One day, you'll tell this story, with tears in your eyes, but this time, tears of gratitude. And you'll say, I was at my lowest. But God brought me out. And today, I stand as living proof that he never abandons those who trust in him. You are far too precious to stop here, and all of heaven is cheering you on.